one of the most fundamental principles in American sports. Saturdays in the fall are for college football, while Sundays are for the NFL, did not happen by accident. It was written into a bill passed by Congress and signed by President Kennedy in 1961. The primary purpose of the law was to grant professional sports leagues an antitrust exemption for negotiating television rights collectively and distributing the money equally, which was no small feat during an era when anything that hinted at communism was terrible politics. A key part of the deal was that the NFL would lose antitrust protections if it broadcast any games from 6 p.m. on Friday nights until Sunday that were being played within 75 miles of a high school or college game. That meant Saturday was legally protected as college football's day. But 63 years on, there's a catch. Restrictions on the NFL are only valid through the second Saturday in December. That made a lot of sense back then, because the college season was over, save for the New Year's Bowl games. These days, though, and especially this year, it has put college and the NFL into direct competition. And the result of that conflict will undoubtedly suck up a lot of attention next week as we analyze the first set of games from the expanded college football playoff. As sports viewers and fans, Saturday will be a bonanza unlike anything we've seen. At noon Eastern, SMU will play Penn State, Clemson will play Texas, and Tennessee will play Ohio State in the primetime game at 8 p.m. in temperatures projected to be in the teens. It is projected to be one of the great days in college football history. And it's also, to some degree, going to be overshadowed by the fact that the Houston Texans and Kansas City Chiefs will be kicking off at some point in the second quarter of the SMU Penn State game. The Pittsburgh Steelers-Baltimore Ravens clash will mostly be running concurrently with Clemson, Texas. It's a big issue, and it was discussed at length. Recently retired American Athletic Conference Commissioner and former sports television executive Mike Oresco told USA Today News Sports, "No one liked it, believe me." Reality check. As amazing and unique as it will be for fans to finally see playoff football in iconic places like Happy Valley, Austin, and the Horseshoe, the NFL would be a 2-touchdown favorite to win the ratings battle on Saturday. It's easy to see why. A year ago, the Week 16 games on Saturday drew 14.3 million viewers on NBC for Pittsburgh-Cincinnati, and 7.3 million for Bills-Chargers, which was shown exclusively on Peacock. This year's NFL matchups are even more attractive, as all 4 teams are likely playoff-bound, and both games will be displayed on over-the-air networks. As football fanatics with access to split screens and multiple devices, it's heaven. However, such a stark, one-on-one comparison to King NFL will probably highlight the most significant potential issue with the expanded CFP. By adding more teams, more rounds, and extending the season until January 20th for the championship game, college football is trying to grab a piece of real estate the NFL has already claimed. And that presents many existential issues that could shape how the playoff looks as the sports leaders try to figure out what works best to put their sport in the spotlight. "Everybody will be looking closely to see how the ratings look," Oresco said. "At some point, it's tough to get in there without that overlap. It's going to be very interesting. There's limited flexibility where you can put these games to maintain competitive equity and not have games spread out during the week where someone will have the rest advantage for the next round." Had college football embraced a real playoff a couple of decades ago, when it became clear there was an appetite for something besides the bowl championship series, it might have had a chance to put down roots on these Saturdays in December, even if they aren't protected by law. Instead, the NFL has filled that void, and rightfully so. From mid-December on, Saturday is their day. College football and its partners at ESPN/ABC and TNT are trying to shave off a piece of their audience. It's going to be great for college football fans, but the reality is that the games will need to deliver to break through when they're running up against the most bankable ratings monster in sports? That's not easy. Even the NBA, which used to own Christmas Day, has struggled to reproduce its ratings in that time slot since the NFL planted its flag there beginning in 2020. They take territory, Oresco said. They're not shy about that. The direct conflict college football finds itself in continues the unavoidable, but primarily self-inflicted scheduling issues that have plagued the CFP. In the college football playoffs' first 10 years, ratings were generally good when the semifinals took place on New Year's Day, and not nearly as good when they were on other days. That was no surprise to anyone except those who created the CFP with expectations that they would change the paradigm of New Year's Eve in this country. According to former director Bill Hancock, what happened is that college football learned it doesn't have the power to shape viewing behavior on that level. In other words, it's not the NFL. With bowl and television contracts expiring in 2026, the playoff will have more flexibility and power to demand that its quarterfinal games primarily take place on January 1st. This year will feature a New Year's Day triple-header with one game kicking off at 7:30 p.m. on New Year's Eve. That's more traditional territory where college football can dominate. But this year's semifinals will be on January 9th and 10th, a Thursday and Friday night. Why? Because playing the games on Saturday would mean an incursion into the NFL's wildcard weekend. And when the CFP concludes on January 20th, it will be the day after the NFL's conference championship matchups are set. This is a problem that may need a solution. It may not even be a problem at all. Regardless of which product you prefer, college football should never have to apologize for not being as popular or matching the NFL's TV ratings. Unless you're an executive at ABC/ESPN, it's unclear why you should care. We live in a culture that frames these metrics like a Rorschach test. If you are inclined to watch the NBA most nights, and believe that the crop of players is the most talented overall that the league has ever seen, you're likely to dismiss or excuse the recent headline that ESPN's ratings were down 28% through the first 18 games broadcast this year on the network. If you're inclined to dislike the NBA, it's a told-you-so opportunity to blame the style of play, wokeism, or the prevalence of non-American stars. If college football gets crushed in this weekend's ratings wars, it won't mean that expanding the CFP was a mistake or that the selection committee picked the wrong teams. This means that enterprise leaders have to care and think about the best way to optimize while trying to avoid the appearance of citizens. It will be challenging. In the first 10 years of the CFP, staying in the headlines for the 10 days between the semifinals and the championship was challenging. That only gets more difficult once you push the season into a month typically dominated by the NFL playoffs. In an ideal world, college football would end on New Year's Day, as it has for decades. But unless conference commissioners are willing to shorten the regular season, no chance, move the start date a couple of weeks earlier, highly unlikely, or eliminate conference championship games, tough sell, the CFP will spend most of its time fighting for oxygen with the NFL's crescendo toward the Super Bowl. That's a little battle. Afterward, we have a firmer idea of whether college football will pay the price.